Danny Haiphong, welcome to Chongqing.
Thanks. It's great to finally meet you, Daniel.
Yeah, man, it was must have been about 4 years ago when we made our video together.
Yes.
And we finally get to meet on this this trip.
Yeah.
And so you've been to China many times, but this is actually your first time to Chongqing, right?
Yeah, it's my first time to Chongqing. It's been a long time in the making. I mean, even just in the last year, Chongqing has kind of blown up. So many people have come here, eyes show speed, but also for years, Alex from Reportify Media, he's been covering what's been going on here, the developments, just the activity, the liveliness of Chongqing, and they call it the Cyber City for a reason. It is bright, high tech. There's just people come here just to look at the city, and that's what is kind of incredible about it. It's also huge. I mean, you know, there are big cities in the United States, there are big cities in China, but this city is just absolutely, just incredibly large, 30 plus million people, and you get such a big sense of that when you're here.
Yeah, I often say, oh, watch out here. Let's move in for this car here. I often say that Chongqing is kind of like the kind of city that a crazy kid would dream up in their very imaginative head, with all these bridges and tunnels and secret pathways and, you know, places where you enter on the first floor and then by the time you get to the other side, you're on the 22nd floor. Right. It's just such a cool city. And of course, so we met a couple of days ago here. You had a barbecue at my place, and we went out to a watering hole, popular with some of the expats here, and we met some pretty cool people, even some of your fans.
Yeah.
I bet you never get used to that, do you?
No, it's kind of strange, but it was great to meet them. You know, they're Americans. One of them was from Spain, but they, you know, they moved here. They're studying here. They're working here, and they're just so interested in China, the real China. And I think there's a trend going on really worldwide, but centering in the collective West, especially the United States, where US and Western aggression toward a country like China is sparking a lot of curiosity about the country's development, about what is China really all about, and how does it fit into this increasingly chaotic and crisis-ridden world that it just so happens the countries that they're moving from or that they're traveling to China from are responsible for. Right. And I think that this is a trend that is very much welcome. And of course, I live in the United States, and the Trump administration has actually been accelerating that process for a variety of reasons, and Biden before him. So I think we are seeing this explosive interest in China, and even in Chongqing. It seems on the surface like it's just about, wow, look how cool the city is, look how great it is. But actually, I think what it's really about is people are interested to see what the Chinese people are doing here and what China, its government, its economic system are doing, and how it's different than what people in the West, in the United States, are experiencing, which is not surprising because there really is a different path and a trajectory that is quite different between the two parts of the world that are increasingly in conflict with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, so you got people from all over the world. We even had a guy there who was a Russian guy who in his youth, when he was doing his military service, he was based in East Berlin before the wall fell. Sure. So it's pretty cool to hear from people like that. But then you also get people who are like us from the West. Yep. But, you know, like, for example, Diego, who started out in journalism, studying journalism in university in the US, and then he found out that, well, mainstream journalism, you can't actually do real journalism. He found that out as early as, we'll go to the side here for a bit, as early as university, because he wanted to do a university piece on money and how it affects academia. And the university said, "Oh, no, you can't do that." So then he decided, you know what, I'm not going to do journalism. I'm going to go into civil service and do something a little bit different. And so you get people who have grievances with the way things work in the West who are also coming here. And it's interesting because there were, you know, pre-COVID, you would go to bars like these, you'd go to places like these, and there'd actually be more, a higher percentage, not necessarily a higher percentage, but more so than now, I mean, of foreigners who are always crapping on China. And it's kind of weird. It's like, well, what are you doing here? Like, everything is good. Their life is good here. It's really cool down here. Take a look at this. Maybe we should walk down that way.
Wow, yeah.
But then after COVID, I don't know what it was, like COVID zero, they were kind of like, all right, I'm out of here.
Right.
Or also that if you're a foreigner living here for this long, or you're seeing the country improve around you,
Yes.
how could you not be excited by this?
Right.
And so now when you go to places like I took you a couple days ago, you get more people who have so many good things to say about the country. It's quite amazing the shift that's happening.
Oh, definitely. One of the things that has always struck me about coming to China, and I say this to everyone, is just how confident people are and how you get the sense that you are in a society and in a country that is on the rise, that life is improving, that prospects and opportunities and hopes and desires. I mean, China calls it the Chinese dream. Like that this is actually something that's becoming increasingly a reality for more and more people. And that means, contrary to a lot of the global south, which has been plunged into extreme poverty and dependence and debt on the collective West, especially the US-led world financial system, because China doesn't have that kind of problem, it's not a surprise that as life has improved here in China, that perhaps also the special treatment that maybe Westerners might have received in the past, while everyone is respected, and I'm sure a lot of these folks, these expats who are so hateful toward China now, they haven't necessarily been treated badly. It's just that they're not going to be treated above the actual people who live here.
The special privileges are
yeah,
gone.
They're not going to get special privileges. Aren't going to be looked at as better than the people of China themselves, who are the main focus of China's development model. Why would they be?
Well, yeah, you will find that actually foreigners are still treated really, really well in China. Sometimes they go out of their way to help you, but definitely it was far more extreme before, and there were people who were taking advantage of that.
Yeah.
And as those privileges kind of dried up, or as patience were lost for people who were clearly taking advantage of the people here, then you did have some of them that went, pretty negative, or just left and said, okay, well, but with the current tensions with China and the U.S., the trade wars and everything like that, how have people reacted to you here when you've said you're American?
Well, actually, I was at the Zhejiang prison, which was in 1949, a month after the Chinese Revolution, 1949, October 1949. The former Nationalist Party, the KMT, which lost the revolution, they committed a horrific massacre, killed nearly 200 people, including children, and now there's a huge memorial at this prison that we visited, and there was just hundreds of school children there, and they were, of course, this happens all the time, especially when you go outside of the big cities, or you go further south or west of China. There's even more interest and curiosity about, wow, foreigners, especially Western foreigners here in my town. And so the children are very curious about us. And when I said, I'm HSK 1 level Chinese, when I said, 我是美国人, they were like, what? And they asked, and this is fucking hilarious. This is actually, when I'm in China, a lot of people will ask this. They say, is it dangerous? Do you just get shot up when you're there? The perception of the United States actually is not so, wow, America must be amazing. It's actually, the perception of the United States has declined. It has gone in complete decline, especially here, where that might be the first question. Oftentimes it's the first question I get is, how do you feel in the United States? Is it safe there now? Or how are you really doing? And even children, they were joking about it, of course, making but that was the reaction. And when I spoke even a little Chinese, they were shocked. They're like, what? Even in my broken, still much needed work tones.
That's really funny. Like, it's almost like you would imagine if, somebody came to China a long time ago from America, or when there's tour groups that go to North Korea, you would imagine that it would be those tourists asking or checking up on the local people, like, are you guys really okay here? But now you, as a grown American man, are having children in China worried about your safety when you go back to the U.S.
Yes.
Are you really okay?
They truly believe that And of course, the United States has a huge mass shooting problem, but that's the perception, is that because that is a big problem, it's just so alien here. It's not something that people in China worry about. So when they see it, even kids, they're just like, wow, that must be really scary for you.
Wow, yeah. No, it is a really big shift. So all in all, Chongqing wasn't your first stop, right?
We were in Shanghai we did a conference.
Okay.
I know you just spoke to Ben recently, Ben Norton. We had a conference at the Shanghai Institute for American Studies.
Okay.
And John Weiwei was there, and we spoke about U.S.-China relations. So I spent a few days in Shanghai, and then one night in Wuhan, which was great. Food there is incredible.
It's a great city.
And yeah, really cool. And then we took I guess you could say the medium or slow train from Wuhan to Chongqing.
Right.
And we've been here so as of this recording, this will be the 4th day. And then we're gonna go to Chengdu and finish in Beijing. So
beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful.
great trip.
When you see China, and you've come a few times, do you think, obviously everywhere has their own systems that work for them. And I don't think, for example, a Western system would ever work here. I don't think China's system would necessarily work where we're from. But do you see things here and you think like, man, we should really do this? Or I wish we could get, are there specific things that stand out? Like saying, why can't we have this?
Right. Well, I think the first thing, because my work focuses so much on foreign policy and geopolitics, I think a big part of geopolitics, whether it's covering West Asia, Gaza, Palestine, the U.S. and Israeli, the U.S.-Israeli alliance and axis of terror and genocide, like when you cover that, or Russia, Ukraine, or even what's happening here in Asia with the United States, when you come to China, what you realize is that China's foreign policy is a direct reflection of its domestic policy. There is really a focus on China and on its development, on its needs and interests, and what China needs to do to improve and to get better. And so every time I'm here, you even get that. I've been coming since 2019, and you come back, like I was in Dunhuang in 2023, they suddenly had a huge national theater, and suddenly they had a city center in Dunhuang, which didn't even exist in 2019 to any significant degree. So, and this is in Gansu province, all the way in the west. Right. So this is the kind of changes you see. Every time I'm here, I take the high-speed rail. I make it a point because, and I publish a video on my channel commenting on geopolitics from the high-speed train, the Fuxing. That is something the United States doesn't even have, right? We talk, when I'm on my channel and people are talking military, they often talk, well, the United States is far behind in military technology. Yemen has hypersonic missiles. The United States doesn't have it. Well, the United States also doesn't have high-speed rail, and why is that? Well, the United States is its government, its political system, its economic system is so reliant upon war and attempting to pursue a policy of domination over the rest of the world that we don't get as Americans. We don't get things like high-speed rail. We can't even get to this point of moving forward on infrastructure and improving the lives of ordinary people, in large part because the United States and the elites that control it are more interested in accumulating as much money as possible from the rest of the world. And that is a direct reflection of U.S. domestic policy. So that crumbling infrastructure, that economic decline we're seeing in the United States, the fact that more and more people are struggling, the homelessness that so many people around the world comment on, all of that is a reflection of how the United States pursues its interests abroad. And with China, it's the same. It just so happens that China's foreign policy emphasizes peace, it emphasizes cooperation, and you see that here in China. Right. People here are working to make China better. Doesn't mean China has it all figured out, but they are working to make their country better, and to do so with an emphasis on development, not aggression. Or, it's funny, every time I'm here, I always think about how China gets portrayed as this surveillance state and police state and, human rights catastrophe. But when I'm here, it's far more relaxed. The relationship with the police here in China is
yeah.
far different. You'll get people arguing with the police. You'll see very few police in most places in China. You won't even know there's a security system in many ways. And then because of automation, even a lot of the security systems in public spaces, you won't see anybody. That's so different than in U.S. cities where there's a huge emphasis on security and on policing and on how to kind of make people's lives harder, even though they're already so
It is
hard.
so true, and this is something when somebody from outside of China hears this, it's hard for them to process.
Oh, yeah.
Where you're right, if you ever see a fight between a person and a police officer, it's going to be the person yelling at the police officer.
Yes.
And I've even caught myself doing it. I've been here for 17 years, and I have to remind myself afterwards. I'm like, oh damn! When I go back, I've got to remember I can't do that. I can't do that back home.
Nope.
And they don't try to hassle you here. You're not going to see them, camping out at the bottom of a hill where, 60 zone turns into a 40 zone because they know a lot of people aren't going to slow down right in time just to find any opportunity to give you a ticket.
Right.
They don't do that here. And, I wonder if, like, a part of it is we've manufactured this false sense of freedom in the West. One of those false senses of freedom is being able to vote for a different party, bring a totally different party in.
Yeah.
Even if your life is not going to change at all, but you feel like you've done something.
Right.
But when you actually look at it on paper, almost nothing changes, especially with foreign policy. Obviously, Trump's shaking things up a little bit right now, but it's like what Eric Lee, who does a lot of stuff with Zhang Weiwei in Shanghai, said. It's, in America, you can change the party, but you can't change the policies. In China, you can't change the party, but you can change the policies.
Yep.
And you really feel like the government is here to serve the people. So if they started screwing people around on stupid little things, their outlet is not going to be, okay, well, we're just going to vote for a different party.
Yep.
Their outlet would be far more consequential to this government.
Yes.
So in some ways, it almost breeds a hyper accountability from the government here. Again, I know that's going to be really difficult for a lot of people to process outside.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to theorize and come up with a reason as to why you feel so much safer, so much freer, so much more valued in China, even as a local Chinese here, than you do in the West.
Yeah.
That's one of the possible theories, but there's no question about it. You do feel more free here. There are things that are getting done. Changes are being made. They don't hassle you over stupid things here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's great.
Yeah. I mean, there's really a lot to unravel when it comes to this difference, because it is fundamental to the work that I do. When you see the United States, for example, spends over $1 trillion at least on so-called national security, so-called defense, but really on the military and on endless war. When you see that, it's still a direct reflection of what's happening in the United States, because a very similar amount of money, not the same amount, but a similar amount of money is spent on policing, is spent on prisons, is spent on so-called national security, at the expense of what people really need. People need jobs, they need development, they need education, they need to be free from debt.
Yeah.
Here in China, one of the key elements of what's happening here is actually to ensure people don't get into debt. One of the biggest scandals that the Western media tried to take advantage of was what happened to Alibaba and Jack Ma. And, it was so interesting. Just a few years ago, he supposedly disappeared. But really all that happened was that Alibaba got into trouble because it was trying to make a speculative form of credit through its payment system, and the Chinese government wasn't having it. And this is why you have Chinese people not mired in debt, because the government cares about their economic security and their economic freedoms, and that leads to a massive amount of freedom in the larger sense. The United States doesn't prioritize economic freedom. It doesn't prioritize improving the actual human rights situation of people in the United States. So then you have a geopolitical situation where the US, acting as a hegemon, is able to take all of what it doesn't do for ordinary people in the United States and use it to invest in wars and interventionism, and then of course the national security that you need to keep that system in place.
Right.
China doesn't have that because China doesn't do this. China doesn't get into wars, and it doesn't seek hegemony. It's very clear on that. Actually, it's so clear on that many people criticize China for not being aggressive enough abroad. They say, well, why isn't China doing more in Ukraine? Why isn't China doing more for Russia with Ukraine, or for Iran, or for the Palestinians, right?
It's not in their
It's
philosophy.
And it's like, China's a very non-interventionist foreign policy. And in large part, that's because China is now just coming out of what it talks about, a century of humiliation before the revolution. And it's taken 70 plus years now to get to a point where it is prospering, it is becoming this economic powerhouse. But the work isn't done. I mean, there's still a lot of development to happen, a lot of incongruencies between
For sure.
the countryside, the rural areas, and the cities. Still relative poverty, which they talk about now, raising incomes even further.
For sure.
Ensuring that all people have access to the technological development. All of these things are a work in progress. It doesn't happen overnight, despite the fact that China can build a hospital in 7 days. It can accelerate technological development to the point where it is the world leader in just a matter of years in all of these different fields, AI, 5G, etc. But it's a huge country with a long history
Right.
of being humiliated and oppressed, and it's still coming out of that. So this is the difference, is that China is on a different path because it does have a different history, as you said. That's why the model isn't necessarily exportable. But what we can learn, I think, from China, and really the world movement that it is leading and is a big leader of, this multipolar world movement, is that first and foremost, sovereignty, respect for the true independence of a people and a country, that is really what lies at the heart of geopolitics. If that isn't happening, if you have the United States and the West trying to interfere in the affairs of other countries, well, and it's always violently, whether economic or militarily or otherwise, well, that is a reflection of just a fundamental problem at the class level, at the level of power, which should tell us that these different trajectories are, they're really not only just serious, but they tell us what we need to kind of know to enact our own kind of fundamental change, which is what should be the goal. It should be, we shouldn't just know what the US is doing, we shouldn't just know how the world works, but we should be seeking to make it a better place. And the only way we can do that is to identify what the truth is here. And the big truth is that China is not only not our enemy, but we can learn a lot from what the two different trajectories of these systems, the unipolar and the multipolar system,
that's probably what they're afraid of too, because imagine, of course, you said it right. The system here is not necessarily exportable, but there's probably a lot of things. Maybe let's go down this way.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of things that the U.S. could learn from China, how it gets things done, how it manages construction, whatever it is, how they can deliver real improvements to people's lives like China has for its people. But because China is demonized so much, and that's probably part of the reason as to why it's demonized so much, is so that people don't ask those questions. When you're telling somebody in the US, we should learn a few things from China, that sounds ridiculous to them because they've been so propagandized into their position. And it kind of reminds me of what a really good friend of mine, Ali, he's from Lebanon, he's a professor in Guangdong province, and he said, as an example, when the Soviet Union fell, all of a sudden workers' rights and benefits and all these things went down in the US. Because they no longer had that serving as an example where people were saying, why can't I have that? And that was beautiful for people in power. That was beautiful for people who were rich and wanted to enrich themselves even more and exploit people as much as possible. And so they don't even want to get into that situation to begin with, where people start asking themselves the questions, why can't we have what China has?
Yes.
But it seems to be slowly happening anyways.
Right.
You know, especially with like iShowSpeed's visit here.
Yes.
Imagine how many youth he's opened the eyes
Totally.
of in regards to China.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and Chinese people are becoming more proud too. You know, the older generation, 30s, 40s, and above, they're proud of China's strong response to the tariff war.
Yep.
Because they're saying and they're seeing we're no longer going to be taken advantage of.
Yes.
You know, we were taken advantage of before, but we're strong now.
Yep.
And we can get through this.
Totally.
For the younger generation, like the, you know, under 20, I've got kids, you know, kids in high school, and it was iShowSpeed's visit.
Yep.
Where they were like, oh man, that's so
Yes.
cool. It gave them a sense of pride. It's like,
Yeah.
kids all around the world are looking at China, the place I live, and saying, wow, this place is so cool.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, well, I mean, you hit so many important points, and a big one is the fear of an alternative. Those in power, because it's not, you know, we have. I always distinguish, even though some detractors may not believe it, but I always distinguish between the U.S. government and those who are really dictating terms of U.S. foreign policy with the people.
Yeah.
You know, because, well, yes, people can be propagandized and moved in a direction that is not serving their interests.
Yeah.
They,
No, sorry. I'm trying to find a right way to cross the road, because this is the place I was talking about, which was the first floor on one side and the 22nd on the other. Did you see it?
Yeah, but we can go.
Yeah, okay, all right, we'll
I
see
think
it.
we got to go through this.
Yeah. So continue, sorry, yeah.
No, it's cool, even though that's true, what is always true, and we've seen this, because I think iShowSpeed's visit is a reflection of a changing trend that actually now is bearing fruit in data. Because of Trump's trade war, what ended up happening is that anti-China sentiment in the United States is absolutely out of control.
Yeah.
By the time the Biden administration was leaving, I call it anti-China sentiment, but the polls from Pew Research usually ask the question in the terms of what is the favorability, right? What kind of views do people have on China? Negative, positive, don't know, in the middle.
Right.
And 80+%, some of them get almost to 90% for many years now. Biden era, end of the first Trump era administration, were polling at this ridiculous level. Where people in the United States had such a negative view of China. But in just a few months, with Donald Trump's administration's tariffs and how China responded to them, that number from 80+% went down 7 whole percentage points in just a quarter. So just a quarter of a year, we saw people polling in highly flawed polls that only gets a very small segment of the population, demonstrating that there is an impact, not just on Trump's tariffs, which backfired terribly, led to the United States needing to concede and roll them back, pause them for a period of time. But I was astounded, actually. I wasn't necessarily astounded in the sense that I didn't think China would stand up for itself, but the way that it did during this time. The Chinese foreign ministry using the words, "We are ready for any kind of war," and then standing firm throughout this period without any concessions made. People saw that in the United States, and they were impressed. They were impressed because, number one, most people already knew that tariffs themselves aren't going to benefit them.
Right.
It was either going to have nothing to do with them, or it was going to affect them negatively. Inflation, even job loss. It was not like the first Trump administration and the Biden administration had zero tariffs already on China, and that had a negative impact. And so people remembered this. So when Trump escalated it to the level of 100+%, people were already not enthusiastic about it, because it wasn't as if it was going to come with a policy or come with benefits after the fact. So, but then when China stood up for itself in this way, a lot of people say, good for China. I know people that my wife works with, she's a nurse. She said nurses, a lot of nurses coming from the Philippines and, you know, the Caribbean and all kinds of places around the world, which tends to be the case in the U.S. healthcare system in terms of nursing staff and healthcare workers, they were talking. They follow the news, you know. They get these notifications on their phone, like just like everyone else, and they were talking about how cool they thought it was for China.
Yeah, for sure.
To
as we're walking here, I just want to show this. So
yeah,
basically, it's ground level over there. We came up like a flight of stairs, so you could say this is like the second or third floor.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we'll see what it looks like on the other side.
We're gonna see the back soon.
Yeah. But no, you're right. And even places that traditionally, even in the region, that have conflicts with China.
Yes. Japan, South Korea,
Vietnam. Even the Vietnamese people were praising China's response.
And we saw, too, during this period, we saw just impressive shows of, you know, during Victory Day, you had Vietnamese and Chinese soldiers, Vietnamese people, very excited to see Chinese. So like you had
I
so
saw
much.
that.
Yeah, you have so much, I think, movement away from the U.S. pole toward China.
Right.
I say that the Trump administration, but really, this isn't just Donald Trump, because I think people can get very hung up on personalities and individuals. And, you know, Donald Trump is a big one.
Right.
But the U.S. foreign policy establishment, the economic system that it is a byproduct of, it has been doing this for many years. It has literally been moving the world toward China and away from itself because of its reckless sanctions and its endless wars. And the trade war was just a rapid example of the maximum pressure economically that the United States is witnessing as a huge backfire effect. And now we're seeing
This is the rail that
oh gosh, yeah, this gets my knees that gets my knees a little weak.
ISO Speed actually wanted to do a backflip off of this, and his security team stopped him.
Yeah. Oh, I supposed to be got close to this, huh?
Yeah. He wanted to do a backflip off of this back into the main area here, and his security team stopped him.
Yeah, I supposed to be. I can't do that.
My son, I think we were traveling when he was in Chongqing.
Yeah.
And my son had his live stream on, and so I kept hearing everything, and it was kind of cool. I picked up on little bits and pieces. When he was in Chengdu, also, there was this, I could hear a Tibetan guy in the background yelling out, Tashi Dele, which is their greeting. I've got a lot of friends in, the Tibetan friends in Chengdu, is a huge population there. So I was seeing little cool things that he was interacting with. But this is probably a good place to wrap up, where we end
definitely
right here, and we see the river, some of the lights here. It's Monday as we're filming this, so not as many of the lights are on, but it's still pretty spectacular. The other side, what we can't see, the Hongya Dong area, the Hongya Cave, is even more spectacular, and it looked really great tonight. But yeah, well, you know what? I think that's a good place to wrap up. We had a pretty good walk. It's pretty humid. We're both starting to sweat now.
Yeah.
So we'll go and catch up with the rest of the group. But it was really nice talking to you.
Yeah.
I hope you're enjoying your trip in China. It seems like you are.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll be back. I'm sure you'll be back.
Yeah. Got to come back.
All right.
Great.
Sounds good. All right. We'll see you guys next time.
All right.
Peace.